Learn what a data supply chain is and how you can track all of it and more using Azure Purview. This week on Data Exposed MVP Edition. Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed MVP Edition. Today I have a special MVP joining us today, Wolfgang. And Wolfgang, before we get into the episode, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, hi and welcome from Austria. My name is Wolfgang, and I'm working as a data consultant. And what I do on my day-to-day job is like helping our customers to get some insights out of their data. And in my spare time, I'm a community guy organizing a user group, a local one. I'm a member of the Azure Data Community Advisory Council, and spending time at conferences, virtual or in person.
Awesome. Cool. Well, it's great to have you on the show. I know you're a really busy guy and have been traveling around a bunch and doing a lot of things. So we're excited to have you on. Today, we're going to be talking about Azure Purview, which we haven't talked a ton about on the show. And specifically, I think today we're going to be talking about Lineage. So I think to kick us off, maybe a good starter question is, why is it important to track data lineage in your data landscape?
Data lineage it's very important because if you know your data systems, but you don't know what actually happens in between, it's like you are missing a really, really important point. And that is where data lineage kicks in, like all those relationships between systems, those data transfer processes, and so on. So it's really, really important to know more than just the systems.
Yeah. And you use this term supply chain. And does that refer to data lineage, like the supply chain?
Yeah, it's like you can compare it to the supply chain of products. It's like the data supply chain. I often compare it to where does my data come from and where does it go to. So it's really a thing where the interconnection between systems kicks in.
Got it. Very cool. Okay, so let's get right into it. You want to take us through what is data lineage in Purview?
Yeah, sure. I can show you some slides. So data lineage in Microsoft Purview, and maybe you know what Microsoft Purview is. Just a short recap: it's a data governance suite. It changed name and it got integrated into a suite of tools. And today I would like to talk about one piece. It's a data catalog. And the data catalog, there are like 4 or 5 things a data catalog should do, and Microsoft Purview does. It's to map your data sources and to help you to discover trusted data by classifying data, like putting some sort of classification. It's an email address in there and so on, or providing business context with a business glossary. And what it also does, it helps you to supply or to understand your data supply chain, as we already talked about it. And the data supply chain, I get that question very often. What is it? Yeah. And to sum it up, it's like data lineage or the data supply chain, it talks about where does my data come from and where does it go to? And some of those examples are like, what are the dependencies between data systems? Like you've got an ERP system, a CRM system. What happens in between? What are the data transformation processes? Like for a data warehouse, it's quite obvious that you have some data transformation. But between those systems, it's like there are some relationships, but nobody really knows. And in our case, like data warehousing, those data sources for reports, where does that value come from? What happens on the way from the source system into the report? And for Microsoft Purview, there are some concepts I have to mention before I start into the lineage itself. It's like you define a data source, like a connection to a database, your ERP system, your CRM system. And there's a process which is called a scan, which does the technical inventory. And what you get out of it are data assets, like a table, a schema in a database, a file in a data lake, an Azure Data Factory copy pipeline, something like this. So those are data assets. And there are relationships between those assets, and that is the data lineage. And there are different ways how data lineage comes into the Purview data catalog. The first is like the Azure Data Factory copy activity. So if you copy data from, in that example, from a data lake into a database, it's like getting the lineage, those relationship between the file and the database table in your Purview data catalog. And there's a thing which can be distinguished. There is asset level lineage, like between the file and the table. And Purview also helps you with the column level lineage. So as you can see in the screenshot, there is some sort of renaming, like the CRM number is getting into the customer number. So everything is tracked on the way of your data. Another way how lineage can get into Purview is using Spark and Databricks connectors. The Databricks connector, it's quite new. It's like brand new and available to get all those data transformation on the way into Purview and your data map. Power BI, I'm working with Power BI since many years now, and there is a relationship between a Power BI data flow, a data set, a report, and a dashboard, and also that kind of lineage is imported into the Purview environment. And if there is something missing, like Purview doesn't understand all those data systems out in the wild, there is an API available where you can put in like your custom connections using that API. And now, well, it's getting into the really hot stuff, my favorite feature. It's the dynamic SQL lineage.
Okay, and, so what is that?
Yeah, so that one is really nice because when you have a database and Purview does a scan, it does the static scanning, like the schema. You've got a database table, all those columns, data types, and so on. Plus, it fetches the runtime information. What are the stored procedures that are executed? What are the dependencies? Are there any select into some merges and so on? Are there any relationships between objects in there? And the operations are recorded in the database. I just put it here like recorded. And Purview does two types of scans. One for the metadata, the table definitions, and the other one for the lineage extraction, all those operations that were performed. And every 6 hours, Purview queries all those operations that happened and puts them into the data catalog. And when I open the Purview Studio, that is the detail page of a stored procedure. And if you move a little bit further down to the properties, well, you've got a section where you have some sort of input relationships, like data assets that are getting into or are used by that stored procedure, and that are output, like you have some sort of query and put it into a result table. And on the other side, you've got runtime information, like how many executions, how long did it take, how many of those CPU milliseconds were used, and everything is put together into that lineage graph. That is the output. And it can get even a little bit more distributed, like you have all those dependencies between those systems. And that is like, if you don't know your dependencies between your systems, well, you have to know them. So data assets are the start, but what really, really matters is the lineage between those data assets.
Awesome. Wow. I have learned a lot in this episode. You know, at the beginning of this episode, I was a little bit hesitant. I was wondering, you know, maybe folks have their own self-documented way of, you know, keeping track of these data dependencies. I think it's pretty clear now why using a tool would be much better, but I'd love your take on, you know, why you think using a tool like Azure Purview for this is better than self-documenting.
Yeah, if you start with the self-documented data catalog, it's old in the second you publish it, because it's not at the latest state of your database. With Purview, you just start a new scan and you get the information that is in the database.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Takes a lot of the room for error and keeping it up to date automatically in a way. This has been a really interesting episode. I personally learned a lot. I think as we wrap, I'd love your advice, your insights, like any tips or tricks for folks who are just getting started with this?
What I would like to tell people, just try Purview and especially try the dynamic SQL. So that one is really amazing.
Okay, cool. So for our viewers, go check out Azure Purview, go check out the new dynamic SQL capabilities. We'll put some links in our description for you to go learn more. Wolfgang, thanks so much for coming on the show. To our viewers, if you like this episode, go ahead, give it a like, leave us a comment, and let us know what you think of these capabilities. And we hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.